Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are doing well. We have a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to have a good show, and hopefully out there, you guys are doing well as well. So, let's see, a couple of things that we should probably mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything for today's show, be that the show notes, be that the, any articles that we do, videos that we show, just anything and everything will be sourced right there. So if you want to, if you want to check it out, if you want to poke around, we write articles, opinion pieces, things like that, more than welcome to, and we encourage it. Also, while you're there, be sure to enter the Logitech contest. It's our social media contest. Just for following what we do on Computer America. You can get in touch with us, you can talk with us, you can reach out and tell us what you think of the show, any guests that you'd like to see, and we'll do our best to make it happen. Anything like that, reach out and we will handle it. Also, be sure to check out the live video stream, which you can watch Computer America instead of just listening. We are still primarily a radio show. We try to keep the show radio friendly, but on top of that, if you feel like you want to watch us, hey, we're not going to not do that. So, feel free to do that over there as well, or join us at twitch.tv/Computer America, and you can talk with us as we do the live show as well. All that being said, why don't we go ahead and just get started? So today, no guest. We originally had planned for Corey Gallagher. If you guys are a regular, you would know that he does our gaming segment. Normally we do all things computer gaming. First Tuesday of the month, it would be our Gamer Tuesday. But today, instead, we actually asked to reschedule him. Just for the simple fact that, E3 is just around the corner. E3 is a huge gaming event. It's probably the biggest, video game event out there all year long. And we felt it would, kind of be better if he would join us later on in the month after the event, so that we're not simply just talking about rumors and what we think could happen out there at E3. Instead, we felt it would be a lot more constructive if we talked about what actually happened at the event. So all that, later on in the month, we'll be sure to let you know. But for now, we have an entire show dedicated to computer and technology news. And that's okay, because there's a lot of news being circulated. And that is for a couple of reasons. The first one is, of course, the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference. That just happened yesterday. And of course, you could watch the keynote and you could see everything that Apple is planning on doing. We still have some news related to that, but it was a lot to digest. And on top of that, happening out in, I believe it's Taipei, Taiwan, is an event called Computex, and that would be like America's CES, but it's for mainly what all of the Southeast Asian / China are all producing with theirs. So a lot of news from companies such as ASUS, and Intel has some exciting news coming out of there. But yeah, there's a lot of big events happening, and this hour is going to fly on by. I promise you that, as we get into computer and technology news. So why don't we go ahead and just get started? And by the way, computer and technology news on Computer America, as usual, is brought to you by OWC and Otherworld Computing. They make a lot of great products. Definitely go check them out. OWCdigital.com or Otherworld Computing. And folks, here we go. All right. So for our first one that we're going to do. And yeah, we are going to lead off with the big one. And by big one, I mean a lot of cores. So this is news out of Taipei, and this is Intel, where if you think that Intel, they were, it's rare to say this, but last year with AMD finally getting back into the market, a lot of people really considered AMD finally competitive once again in the processor field. And they came out with a ton of processors that people loved, known as Threadripper. Threadripper were, I think, up to like 24 was their highest. So it was 12 core. 24 hyper-threaded processors from AMD. And Intel, at its consumer level, the best it had was, I think, before that, they had like an 8-core, 16-thread, as like their tippy top, and then they came out with like the 10 core. I think that was the i10, I want to say, or however they kind of name their processors, because they have like the i7 and then they have the the i9. I take back. I think it was the i9 that came out with the 10 core, 20 thread processors. And some of those go even higher. Some of them were, things like 18 thread. But you started getting into the enthusiast, hobbyist / enterprise field. And it was essentially Intel rebranding their business side of their, the business side of their company and trying to market it to consumers. Not the best thing in the world. The prices are ridiculous compared to what you're used to paying for processors, and that's why some of these processors were $1,000 as opposed to $300, $400, $500. Anyways, fast forward to today. Intel has released this blazing fast, and although there's some legit criticism, but we'll talk about that. But Intel is feeling increasing pressure from AMD and Qualcomm, and the competition will get even more intense if reports that Apple is working on its own chips. And here we go, saying that in an interview with Engadget last week before Computex, Intel's client computing head Gregory Bryant said that Intel would reveal an even more powerful chip than last year's showstopper, which was an 18-core, 36-thread Intel i9 7980XE. So, with that being said, so last year Intel's creme de la creme was an 18-core processor, which by all accounts was a rebranded, Xeon processor. This one looks pretty darn cool. And here we go, saying that they unveiled a single socket processor. So that means just a single chip, and it's a single socket processor with a, I'm sure they mean whopping 28 cores that will run at 5 gigahertz. So 5 gigahertz, that's not half bad. You could probably get that with some of the other processors with less cores and a lot of cooling. And from what I've heard, and this was benchmarking done at the show, the benchmarking was done live, but it only held for about 5 to 10 seconds. That was all that the 28-core processor could do at 5 gigahertz. So I feel like, it's probably going to be closer to 4 gigahertz, but still, it's, still pretty impressive. So 28 cores, and that means AMD's Threadripper processor says the second closest has about 16 cores and 32 threads. So if this thing were to be hyper-threaded, that means that you would have 28 cores and 56 threads of processing power. And I feel like Intel is not missing the mark, but kind of missing the point. And that's 28 cores is very impressive. 56 threads of computing power. That's great. But at the same time, it's also about speed, because what do you need 56 different processors for? And if the speed can't keep up, then there's really no point to them. We've seen this before. We've reviewed computers. Even some of the first i7s out there that were 8-core, 16-thread processors that were like 2 gigahertz in a time when 3 was more than everywhere, and pushing 4 was kind of the place where you wanted to be. They were producing 2 gigahertz chips. And no one wants that. So, let's see. All right. So, Intel also released a new limited edition Core i7 8086K, which runs at 5 gigahertz, to mark the anniversary of its first x86 processor, and will give away 8,086. So, it's an i7 8086K. So, they're giving away 8086 of them in a sweepstakes. So other teasers include Intel's plan for 8th generation core processors named Whiskey Lake, which will be made using Intel's 14 nanometer technology and are designed for lightweight laptops and will have little room for batteries or cooling fans. And another chip series called Amber Lake will also be made on the 14 nanometer production process and be intended for the thinnest laptops and tablets. That's not good. And trust us, we're huge fans of Intel here on the program. We've talked extensively with them over the years, and I don't know what exactly is holding up the 10 nanometer production, because that's what we've been looking for the past 2, 3, 4 years, was moving from 14 nanometer, which, that's great and all. But moving down to a 10 nanometer means that they can squeeze just as much productivity and even more efficiency out of an even smaller processor, which means that you can then have, it's a step up all around. And they've been promising it for a while, but by all appearances, doesn't look to be on the horizon anytime soon. And that's a problem. That's a problem because there are other chip makers, including Apple, who are looking to replace all of their processors with their own processors that I'm pretty sure are working on 10 nanometer themselves. Anywho, Intel also showcased a new iteration of Optane solid-state drive, which will offer up to 1.5 terabyte in a smaller M.2 design. And I will say, M.2, folks, when SSD first came out, we said, wow, going from a traditional hard drive to a traditional hard drive to an SSD was going to increase your computer boot time by just crazy speeds. If you could put your operating system on a solid state drive, you'd see boot times go from about a minute and a half down to 20 seconds or something like that. An M.2 drive is even better than that. I have one, bought it with my own money. Do not regret it whatsoever. I think I use like a Samsung, but I'm sure any M.2 out there from a reputable distributor, definitely look into getting M.2 memory. It's as much of a game changer as SSD was. So, anyways, that was the big news from Taipei, and yeah, so they did not reveal pricing, by the way, for the 28 core processor that they're talking about. But just to give you an idea, their current top of the line 18 core 36 thread chip sells for about $2,000. So ordinarily, these chips, they're going to go down when the next iteration comes out. So the $2,000 is probably going to drop. But whatever this new 28 core processor is going to be, I'm betting it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $2,500 to $3,000. That does not seem unlikely for the product that they're displaying. Although, of course, $3,000 just for a processor, money is certainly no object to those who want it. And one more time, also with speed, the 5 gigahertz benchmark that they're quoting that it's capable of running, that only happened over the course of a few seconds. That was not sustained, and that was using I believe, something called a phase-changing cooling unit. So it had some of the top of the line, best of the best cooling on it as well. So probably bank somewhere between 3 and 4, or high 3s, low 4s, processing speed sustained. There you go. So, yep, Intel's 28-core chip. What a beast. What a beast. All right. So there's that one. That was, probably one of the biggest news stories of the day. Let's talk real quick about, let's see. There's one that we didn't talk about yesterday, but I wanted to talk about it. And it had to do, I don't think I actually have it queued up, so I need to go find it real quick. But it had to do with big news that we just barely touched on yesterday. And it was the fact that Microsoft purchased GitHub, which is huge. Microsoft purchasing of GitHub proved to be a little controversial for a couple of programmers out there. And actually, I do have it. It's right here. Well, 13,000 projects. So these can be open source. These can be, just any projects whatsoever. A lot of people get coding from there for things like Raspberry Pis, for DIY kind of projects, or even much, much larger projects that need community, volunteering and things like that. Well, 13,000 ditched GitHub for GitLab Monday morning. There you go. So GitLab told Motherboard that the company gained about 50,000 new projects in the lead up to the announcement that it acquired its competitor GitHub. So they said that the announcements were met with mixed reactions from the developer community. Some looked at the acquisition as inevitable and the only way to sustain a free platform that had grown as large as GitHub. And large it certainly was. Others saw it as the death knell for the neutral, community-driven platform that was the de facto home for open source software development. Rumors of the acquisition began circulating over the weekend, and then later, of course, they said $7.5 billion later, Microsoft is now the owner of this project. So that's why about 13,000 projects being imported within a single hour. Yet GitLab CEO and co-founder said that the mass migration has been going on for nearly a week. So I guess those who were in the know, they were, they were already transferring their projects over. And GitLab even shared this nice little graph showing about 10 times the normal daily traffic. So yeah, and Motherboard, as usual, does a lot of background research into showing you who these companies are and things like that. But yeah, it's a small fraction, but it shows that there was at least some reaction to the announcement. I believe, let's see, the article says here there are about 80 million projects hosted on GitHub. And this mass migration seems to largely be a knee-jerk reaction by some portions of the developer community who are afraid that Microsoft will mess with the platform and kill undesirable open source projects. So, yeah, and of course, as we've talked on our Linux show, Microsoft is much more receptive to open source lately. It has integrated parts of Linux kernel into its own operating system. And Microsoft, to put it succinctly, Microsoft hearts Linux. So I think 13,000, 50,000 projects going to their competitor out of 80 million kind of shows that, if nothing else, there's a wait and see attitude. And I can't agree more. Microsoft, like we said, Microsoft as a company has more and more embraced open source, and I don't see a future where Microsoft deletes, blocks off, or tries to hold ransom anyone's open source code. So, yeah, again, we'll have to wait and see, but a very, very small portion have spoken out against Microsoft's acquisition. And another thing, it did happen very quickly. So it didn't give people a lot of lead up time to jump ship. So, hey, we'll definitely see. So, and let's see. So why don't we go ahead and switch over to our next topic? And we have a couple of these, tons and tons of stories. Let's do something. All right, just real quick. This one is more of a PSA than it is an actual news story. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this one. So, swatting. It's terrible. No one should ever do it. It's not funny. It's not a prank. It's an actually dangerous activity. And people have been arrested for it. People have gone to jail. People have died being the victim of it. There have been tons of consequences for this to actually happen. So here we go. This one from Ars Technica and John Brodkin talking about a very sensitive topic in this country. Not going to dance around it. It is what it is. But a hoax emergency call sends a SWAT team to the home of gun control activists. And this was a Parkland shooting survivor. And yeah, luckily he wasn't at his house. But this is reported by NBC6, saying that a Broward Sheriff's Officer SWAT team responded to the house but found no one there. And according to the sheriff office deputies, they received the call at about 8:30 saying that someone broke into the home with an AR-15 and was holding the family hostage. And deputies determined that no one was home and the call was unfounded. And nearby, an elementary school was placed on lockdown for over an hour while the police cleared the area. Obviously, they took this very seriously, and anything about guns near schools in Florida, you can see where, they want to be overly cautious. So they said that the survivor told ABC News that it was merely a silly prank, and whoever did it was just trying to, troll or get back or what have you. It's a real problem, and unfortunately, it did happen in Florida. And yeah, let's see. The article also states a December 2017 swatting incident in Kansas that did lead to a man's death when police shot the swatting victim. And a man accused of making the hoax phone call was charged with involuntary manslaughter. That was exactly the case I was talking about, sent a SWAT call to actually the wrong person's house. I believe they were having a fight over the internet, over a game. I want to say it was a Call of Duty or something like that. And the gentleman who was, the one who was getting swatted gave him a fake address. The SWAT team showed up to the fake address, which was a real address of someone else, and proceeded to assume that he had a gun, shot him dead, and it was just a whole mess, unfortunately. So anyways, if nothing else, wanted to say this, that, people have been sent to jail for doing it. People have died from receiving it. It's not a prank. It is not funny. And if you know anyone who is even thinking about it or even jokes about doing it, yeah, slap them upside the head. That is not funny at all. So there you go. Want to get that one out there. Anytime I see swatting in the news, it really puts me in a bad mood, because it has such potential to go wrong. When you send armed police officers to any location on high alert, the possibility for things to go very, very bad, it can happen very quickly. So here we go. And by the way, someone from our chatter asked, why not first degree murder? It was obviously planned. And I think that instance where the gentleman was actually killed, they found him. I think he was he was a younger guy. He was 18 or something like that. Certainly within striking distance of being given, a much more serious charge. But in that case, they argued that he was just some kid pulling some prank. He didn't think anything was going to happen. He was just trolling, things like that. And I know it's a bad move to do. And trust me, the next 15 years of his life are gone, but he's still just a kid. And I think he must have had good lawyers to get it knocked down from first-degree murder to involuntary manslaughter. So there you go. Anyways, that's in the past. Let's talk about some other things that can make your blood boil for other reasons. All right, so this one just happened like less than a couple of hours ago, or at least news of it happening was just released a couple of hours ago. And luckily, it's not as bad as you would think, where MyHeritage, it's kind of like 23andMe, it's Ancestry.com, it's any other DNA testing service. MyHeritage was hacked. But before you start to panic and worry that your secret formula for you has been compromised, luckily, not so much. But it's still a pretty egregious release of email addresses. So this is coming to us from Motherboard, and just real quick, 92 million, yes, so 92 million account details for DNA testing services MyHeritage have been compromised. So on Monday, MyHeritage announced a security researcher had uncovered tens of millions of account details for recent customers, including email addresses and hashed passwords. So it's not as bad as some of the hacks that we've covered here on the program. The main thing is, of course, that the passwords, they're hashed. That means that they are essentially encrypted. And while they could theoretically decrypt them if they happen to have the code for the hash, essentially those were not compromised. So all the passwords, they should be fine. They have your email address, so they don't have all the credentials that you need to get in explicitly. But and also on top of that, nothing of the databases of DNA were compromised as well. So nothing about your heritage test, nothing about your DNA services, nothing like that. Nothing about your medical history have been released. It's simply a trove of 92 million, one would assume, very active or at least very high quality email addresses. Because, hey, people are going to want access to this information. So they're not going to give false emails or old emails. They're going to be emails that they're actively using. So when you sign up to a website handling sensitive information, perhaps medical service or social network, one of the basic things you're probably hoping for is that the site can keep control of its users' data. And, again, to give MyHeritage credit, they did keep the customer's data fine. That was not breached. It was simply the email and the hash passwords. And on Monday, MyHeritage said that the company's chief information security received a message from a security researcher that he had found a file named MyHeritage containing email addresses and hashed passwords on a private server outside of MyHeritage. So one would think that those would be circulated, on a private network or at least a private server outside of MyHeritage. One would think that this security researcher was checking through, what's it called? They were checking through the dark web, the Tor network, the Onion network, whatever you want to call it. So these are compromised and then probably tried to be sold on the open net. And by the way, that means that all 92,283,889 users have been disclosed, again, as far as the email. So they said that, of course, the hash key differs for each customer, and suggesting that the company is also using so-called SALT, an additional typically unique value added to the password before hashing to make the hash itself more resilient to cracking. So they salt it and then they hash it, and while it sounds like breakfast, it means that the passwords are generally pretty safe. Not plain text. So hey, we're getting better, folks, at not being hacked. At any rate, everyone, music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back, and we're going to move on to more computer and technology news right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on. And to kind of wrap up, just real quick before we move on to other things, the point of MyHeritage losing 92 million emails is a couplefold. The first one, everyone who has used that service, be on the lookout for phishing attempts. So this would be anyone with anyone whose email is compromised. Typically, they will feed all of these emails into an automated service that say, hey, we are from MyHeritage. We know that you use the service. Your email is compromised. Potentially, I don't know the exact contents of what a phishing attempt would look like, because it could be so many different things, but they could be as simple as click here to change your password. And that link that you would click in the email would then redirect you and, install malware or have you enter legitimate credentials, and you would then be compromised in that way. So if you're on this list, be careful and changing your password, while not necessary, because the odds of them actually getting your password are going to be very, very slim. But couldn't hurt. So there you go. That's all we're going to say about that. And folks, if you missed any part of that last story or any of today's show so far, feel free to head on over to wherever podcasts are heard. We recommend iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Google Play Store, iHeartRadio, what have you. And you can, of course, listen to today's show in its entirety right there. And okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and pick some of these other stories. And there are some pretty cool ones, some that can make you very scared. All right, how about this one? So a lot of what Apple showed off yesterday during the keynote was this idea of privacy within Apple. So Apple has been, surprisingly, one of the bigger proponents of privacy, keeping your data safe. And while they'll turn over anything within the iCloud, don't get me wrong. If there's a court order, if there is some kind of information stored within the iCloud on Apple servers that they could hand over to law enforcement through due process, they will do that. But as far as data on individual devices, so think your iPhone, they won't unlock the phone for law enforcement. That's that's a pretty cool deal. So here is an article from Gadget I really wanted to do, and it kind of gets into this a little bit more, but what you need to know about Apple's war on digital fingerprinting. And a digital fingerprint, think of it as think of it as like a carbon footprint. Maybe that's a term you're more familiar with, but a digital fingerprint would be a way to uniquely identify a person based on their devices. So my computer, it's homemade. It was originally made by Origin. I've since swapped out parts, changed operating systems, done this, that, and the other. There are a number of indicators within my computer that can identify that as me. So while I may be one of a million people that visits a website, and IP addresses can be spoofed, it doesn't really matter, but they could still identify me, Ben, the visitor, based on the unique serial numbers on my hardware that can then be, used to identify me. So things like that, your digital fingerprint, it's been used by law enforcement, it's been used by advertisers, it's been used by generally everyone, and it's kind of an open secret that you can do this. Well, Apple is working to take steps away from that. And they said that at its annual Worldwide Developer Conference keynote, Apple announced that it would work on blocking another way sites and advertisers track you. And they call it canvas fingerprinting. And they said that if you haven't heard it before, don't worry, or at least don't feel too bad, but actually do feel bad because it's helping advertisers keep an eye on you based on your digital fingerprint. And yeah, this is important because think of things like super cookies, do not track requests, things like that. They won't track you, but they can still attribute data to other systems with your unique fingerprint. So it's kind of like a workaround. Anywho, Canvas fingerprinting actually recognizes your browser of choice based on its configuration, and information about the browser, operating system, fonts, and other pieces of data are combined to create a unique profile. And once that profile is built, it can be shared with other sites and ad networks. In other words, you can be tracked without using cookies, which sucks because cookies are great. So, and I meant real cookies, by the way. Other cookies, I mean, cookies are great. And I definitely mean that in the way of chocolate chip cookies. Those are great. But cookies are also great because those are the things that let you have your username and password automatically or autofill within a browser. Those cookies are the things that let the browser have a level of usability that before cookies, it was really hard to do. So they're very convenient, but at the same time, they can be used to track you. And that tracking ability has been abused in maybe the past 5-10 years. So yeah, cookies, they go both ways. But it's a bit, and they said that Apple says that Safari for macOS Mojave will stop this type of tracking by limiting the browser data that sites can access. But by doing this, instead of site creating a unique profile of a visitor, it'll only see exactly the same information it gleaned from another person using Safari. There you go. So yeah, and it's not a complete, changing of privacy as we know it, but it's one of those open secrets that Apple seems determined. Again, only if you're using the, only if you're using the Safari for macOS or Apple or iOS, only if you're using Safari will this work. Many other browsers out there. So I know Chrome, when you first install it, it asks you for the option of analyzing your hardware, letting you, tracking your user habits so that they can, quote unquote, improve user experience. Things like that. That is what lets these browsers have access to your hardware, and that is what allows websites and advertisers to read that data and then create this profile of you. So it's a very narrow focus. I'm pretty sure Safari only has a browser share of, I want to say about 3%, and that may be giving them too much credit. Let's see, Safari browser share. Let's go ahead, share. And browser market share, and this is by netmarketshare.com. Hey, if you want to look at numbers, it's pretty darn cool. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Let's check out the 5th of 2018. So for those of you who don't know, Chrome, I believe, yes, Chrome is currently sitting at just under 63% users. So 63% of all browsers are Chrome. Edge is at 4.3%. So Microsoft Edge, good for you. I didn't know you had it in you. Firefox is sitting at 10%. Firefox obviously going down, not what you want to see, but it is, with Internet Explorer sitting at about 11.82, which, hey, that's going down as well, which is what we do want to see. And Safari sitting at a respectable, hey, I was right, 3.72%. So this will affect 3.72% of all users, but if you are a fan of being anonymous, there are people out there that are very concerned with privacy. They even do things like use DuckDuckGo. Could you imagine a world? But Safari may be one of your better options. This is a feature not even found, to my knowledge, within Mozilla. So check it out if you'd like to. Anywho, let's see. We're going to wrap up this article here. Like all things privacy and security based, it's an arms race between the makers of tools that'll keep folks from sharing or leaking too much information and the people that want to gather as much data as possible from us to make a profit. And Safari's upcoming feature is just another weapon for consumers to stay anonymous out there while shopping for new shoes. So, yeah, we're going to leave that one there, but that is about as far as Apple can take it, because they can only really affect what's happening. That's about anything, or that's all Apple can do, is affect the products that they make, and then hopefully others will actually change as well as Apple. So there you go. Now, this next story, really want to move on to it, and it's because the product looks pretty cool. I'm very excited for it. I hope that they improve upon the idea of what we consider a smartphone. And one thing that smartphones have always tried to claim was that they had the most screen real estate. I mean, look at Apple. Look at what they did with the iPhone X or the iPhone 10, however you want to say it. And they even gave you two little nubbins of screen real estate at the very top and gave us the dreaded notch that many other companies are emulating themselves. So, after ramping up the hype for the Z5, Lenovo revealed the goods and they weren't as advertised. And the goods, by the way, were Lenovo's quote-unquote all-screen smartphone. And this article I found was from Matt Smith of Engadget, saying that it was a lie. And they say that, and this is something that they teased last month, but it landed with a bit of a chin at the base and a notch at the top. So what's the worst of both worlds? And now we'd make less of a fuss if the company hadn't already coaxed out teaser images of a phone with a screen that appeared to truly stretch edge to edge. And it turns out that the render was just that, a render and nothing else. And yeah, so if you're watching the video portion, we actually have the two different, we have the render that they were showing before the event, and then they have the actual phone that they were showing after. And yeah, some pretty obvious differences between the two. So according to Lenovo's live reveal in China earlier today, the notch is narrower than the iPhone Xs, and the Z5 has a particularly long display with about a 6.2-inch display and a 1080p resolution. Pretty cool. Let's see. Also, dual 16-megapixel cameras, fast charging, and 3 glossy metallic finishes. And if it all sounds a little unremarkable, the good news is that it's at least cheap, with prices starting at roughly about $200 for a 64-gigabyte model. Overhyped, under-delivered, but as the author says, at least it's affordable. So they claim that the Z5 would have a 95% screen-to-body ratio, but the spec sheet doesn't lie and says that the ratio is about 90% screen to body, and notably higher than phones like the Galaxy S9, the Essential phone, and the iPhone X, which play around in the mid-80s percentages. So that's great, but doesn't undo the disingenuous sales pitch. And yeah, we're gonna leave it there, but still, you can see you can clearly see the differences. This isn't just pictures taken from different angles, but clearly they debuted something that was not teased before. So a little bit of market manipulation. We'll see how it actually is. Smartphones. It takes a lot to be really revolutionary in the smartphone market. What iPhone did, 10 years ago, it's going to be quite a while before we see something along those lines just completely change the way everyone does phones. And I'm not sure it's going to be Lenovo who does it. But there you go. Okay, so there's that one. Let's see. How about we discuss all right. This is an idea that's been floating around and makes perfect sense. Mercedes-Benz. Recent headlines aside, check this out. Mercedes Subscription Services is the cheapest one that we've seen yet. And this is Mercedes-Benz is the latest luxury automaker to launch a subscription-based service to get customers who want to have access to a fleet of fancy cars but don't want to actually own one. And the German car company service is called Collection, and shockingly, it's the cheapest one that we've seen so far. So Mercedes-Benz, they're trying to offer a car or ride hailing service or ride sharing service by subscription model. Think Uber or Lyft, but being done through software within Mercedes-Benz vehicles, all controlled by themselves. So here we go. Mercedes is offering 2 plans. Signature, which is going to be about $1,100 a month. Whew. And Reserve, which is $1,600 a month, with a one-time $500 joining fee is also required. And each plan includes insurance, roadside assistance, service, and maintenance, as well as a personal concierge who will flip you from one vehicle to another. So that makes Mercedes plans notably cheaper than comparable subscription services by BMW. And so again, if you haven't heard of this, a lot of higher end car manufacturers are obviously starting to get in on the business as well. BMW will run you anywhere from $2,000 to $3,700 a month. Porsche will run you $2,000 to $3,000, and Cadillac will run you about $1,500 a month. So Signature customers will have their pick between C-Class, GLC, SLC, and AMG CLA vehicles, while Reserve members will have access to E-Class, CLE, AMG GLC, AMG SLC, and AMG C43 vehicles. If that sounded like a bunch of letters and numbers to you, don't worry, it did to us as well. But hey, they have an image here. So here, I guess this is going to, or they're hoping it appeals to those who want new cars but don't want to have to deal with all of the headache or anything else having to do with cars. So this can include, and really, I'm trying to think in my head, is this a good deal? Let's look at the lower one, $1,100, the signature model, and this gives you access to a bunch of C class vehicles from Mercedes-Benz. I have never met a person that would turn their nose up at a Mercedes-Benz. C class would be their more affordable line of cars, but still they'll run you, if my guessing is on point, somewhere between $25,000-$35,000 for one of these cars. Over 5 years, you're making payments on that. Let's say $500 a month just for the car. And then you're looking at $100 or $200 for the year for registration. You're looking at car insurance. You're looking at maintenance. You're looking at cleaning, taking care of a car, storing the car, things like that. Maybe in some weird world, $1,100 a month, while it sounds like a lot, but you get access to any car anywhere you want. All you have to do, pull out the app, and you are able to have it delivered directly to your door. Maybe that's worth mentioning. So Mercedes Collection will undoubtedly appeal to customers who are drawn to a simplified payment structure and the flexibility to swap to a newer car sooner than a traditional lease or finance plan, or a higher quality vehicle than a daily rental from an airport. And still, the $1,100 a month plan is almost 3 times the cost of leasing a C300 sedan in the Nashville area. So, yeah, is this a good alternative to leasing? Maybe. And all those are a big maybe. So, there you have that. It's going to start with this, and then it's going to end with this type of service, but for ride sharing. They've already made mention that they're going to do it when self-driving cars are finally here. This is the service that they're going to offer ride sharing through. So, hey, let's see what Mercedes actually does with it. Okay, so there's that one. Let's see, any of these that we should really mention. Okay, how about this one? This is, again, kind of a PSA kind of deal. Not too important, because as much as I'm mentioning this, for those of you who actually do play it, but Guitar Hero Live. They said that Guitar Hero Live. So this is Guitar Hero that has updated music playlist. It has a bunch of different tracks that you can play on, things like that. Everything you love about Guitar Hero, but updated continuously. The servers are going to go offline in December, and this will make about 92% of the songs unplayable. So the game came with a base set of songs that they worked on. They're shipped with the game, and those don't have any kind of online component to them. But all the games that were added after the fact, or added to their servers, all of those, 92% of the content within this game are going to go away by the end of the year. And in an unceremonious blog post this weekend by publisher Activision, announced that it will be shutting down the servers for Guitar Hero Live Guitar Hero TV mode effective December 1st. And the move will effectively end access to hundreds of playable songs available only in the server streamed mode. So, they said that the players have free access to the few songs being streamed live at the moment on a handful of curated rotating Guitar Hero TV channels, and players can also use in-game rewards or microtransactions to essentially rent access to those online songs on demand. And yeah, both of these options will be cut off in December, and the in-game microtransaction purchases that help power those on-demand plays have already been shut off. So even if you've never played Guitar Hero Live, the server sunset is something to keep in mind as Nintendo moves away from downloadable virtual console and towards subscription access to a smaller selection of older titles. I guess the point with that is the fact that, how do you put it? Video games are getting to the point where you purchase them and you then rent parts. You then rent parts of the game that are supported through microtransactions, subscription services, things like that. And whenever that transaction doesn't make sense for the developer, in this case Activision, whenever they are losing money or there's not enough interest for them to continue, to provide that service, you're going to be left with half a game or a fraction of a game that you were promised when you put down your $60, your $100, what have you. Something to keep in mind as we move away from, all self-contained games. Yep, as far as we want to take that one. Okay, this last one should really cover it because it was one of the keynote stories for today. And this has to do with the Department of Homeland Security and the vehicle face system, as they're calling it. So the Department of Homeland Security will use facial recognition to scan travelers at the border. And the system it's testing will take images of people in their cars. Probably not the craziest thing you've heard when it comes to surveillance, but hey, something worth noting. And they said that, and by the way, this is for the US-Mexico border, taking pictures of Canadians, not as fun apparently. They said that the vehicle face system, as it's called, is scheduled for an initial deployment in August, and it will be installed at the Anzulduas border crossing. I am horrible with names. And the test will take place over 1 year and will aim to take images of passengers in every car that enters or leaves, key part there, enters or leaves the United States through crossing. And those images will be matched to government documents and travelers will be verified before they get to the border checkpoint in theory. And while car windshields reflections have typically prohibited facial recognition systems from being effective, those behind the test are hoping to get around that problem. They're using sensors that can capture images in multiple focal lengths, which might allow the system to differentiate people from reflections. And the work is part of a larger biometric data project that currently includes ongoing facial recognition pilots in 8 airports, including Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta International Airport, O'Hare, Dulles, JFK, all of those. So this is, again, as usual, marked for national security purposes. But don't get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of Americans who have every right to be here, and a lot of legal travelers who are never going to run afoul of the law. A lot of them are going to be picked up by this. In fact, everyone leaving or entering those 8 airports or the U.S.-Mexican border, they're going to be tracked facially in the next couple of years. It's just the way it's going to be. So, of course, they said that there are concerns about how it will be implemented, and those are being taken on by the ACLU, saying that, quote, in a free society, we should all be able to safely live our lives without being watched and targeted by the federal government. So, yeah, we'll see how the technology turns out. But at any rate, folks, we're done here. Thank you for tuning in to the show. The music means that we are just flat out of time. And I know, a whole hour of computer and technology news. We did have our Gamer Tuesday segment planned, but we're going to push that off later into the month so that we can have Corey Gallagher talk, knowledgeably about what happened out at E3 and all the events there. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll let you know when that happens. But in the meantime, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to catch us tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, as we talk with Mike Cermak. There we go. I know I get it. Mike Cermak, and of course, it's going to be a lot of fun, everyone. Until next time, Have a great day. Thank you so much.